SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Last Friday, Estonia's parliament confirmed that taxes on gambling licences would be reduced from 6% to 4%. The cut is backed by the leaders of the Liberal coalition as a new economic driver for Estonia to compete against other EU gambling hubs. Yet within the coalition ranks, the tax cut in pursuit of gambling income has caused uproar and clear splits over whether Estonia should become iGaming's next strategic destination. Welcome back to iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. I'm Charlie Horner, and today I'm once again joined by our editor-at-large, Ted Menmuir, and SBC News editor, Ted Orme-Claye. Gents, I couldn't get rid of you, so I'm afraid you're joining us again. Ted M, how are you?
Good. I'm stuck in this vortex of podcasts before Christmas. It happens every year.
Yeah, indeed. And Ted, I'll say, are you looking forward to being locked inside the iGaming Daily studio?
Oh, yeah. Can't get enough of it, mate.
Look, Estonia, we might think of, not being the biggest economy on the European stage, or the biggest nation indeed on the continent. However, I feel like this story does have deep ramifications for iGaming. So I think it's important that we take a look at this one and see where the wind might be blowing. But Ted M, you've been looking at this story throughout 2025. Why has the Liberal coalition chosen to revise taxes on gambling in a downwards way when other nations, as we've covered a lot, are going upwards?
So why is Estonia kind of backing the trend? I think the key term here is the coalition, which is formed from the parties of the Reform Group as the majority in ST200. And at the start of the year, they revised their economic plan or agenda under the mandate of Prime Minister Kaja Kallas. Kaja Kallas is actually a very prominent figure in Estonian politics, and she's now taken up the mandate of Secretary of Foreign Affairs for the European Union. So she's been a lot in the press recently. So at the time, the kind of economic agenda prioritizes 4 pillars. So it's bringing in new economic investments for Estonia, and for Estonia to become the first kind of Central European, Eastern European nation to get to net carbon neutrality by 2030, and also increasing its military or security investment against Russian intervention and rebuilding its IT infrastructure. Those are the 4 pillars of the agenda. And the party kind of believes under that mandate, under the agenda, there was a mandate to kind of review the gambling tax framework, in which Kaja Kallas stated that she was willing to lower the tax for direct investment in Estonian sports, the building of a new national stadium, and also to bring in kind of new businesses to domicile in Australia, specifically targeting iGaming. It's a debate that has been going out across Estonian politics throughout 2025. On Friday, we saw the parliament settle and decide to lower it from 6 to 4%. That will put it in line with Malta. Estonia, to put it simply, views itself as kind of potentially the next iGaming hub, the next hub for iGaming enterprises.
Yes, and a really interesting pivot from Estonia. And I guess everything you've got to look at this from a political lens is, under that, you want economic growth because we need to increase our defense systems because of everything that's going on at the minute. But Ted OC, were you surprised that Estonia is kind of going against the grain? Because we've talked so much on the podcast this year about other European jurisdictions and other global jurisdictions raising taxes, but Estonia seemed to have other ideas. How did you react when you were covering this news?
It's very interesting to see, yeah, for that reason. Like I say, it's in stark contrast to a lot of the measures we've seen adopted in other European markets. Obviously, the one that we've talked to death lately, the UK, with the measures with the tax increases coming into play next year and the year after. France, obviously, with pretty hefty taxes on online casino. The Netherlands is obviously a constant story there. as we've just said, in contrast, Estonia is going for a much, much lower tax rate. Obviously, though, the thing that isn't surprising about this is the reason they're doing it, though, because they're seeing it as a way to expand a sector that they think could contribute quite significantly to economic growth, like Ted has said, and provide a big boost to the state's finances at a time when it has a number of projects and initiatives it wants to be spending on, not least defence. And they've probably taken a look at some of the countries we'll get into and jurisdictions we'll get into later, like Malta, the Isle of Man, Gibraltar, and so on, and seen how significant a sector gaming is to those different areas' economies, and have thought, well, in the context of lots of other European countries putting taxes up and making the operating environment a bit more difficult for businesses, perhaps they've seen an opportunity in there to offer an alternative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about some of the benefits of iGaming to the economies of European markets a lot recently. Highly skilled, well-paid tech jobs in a growing sector. But those are some of the pros, Ted M. You need to keep remembering to do that. But it's not everyone agreed with this, and as you said at the top, there's a coalition, and not all members of this liberal coalition were in favour of this, and there are oppositions. What's the alternative voice here?
Well, as expected, and this is, again, the key word here is liberal, and you'd expect some opposition, especially from the Social Democrats forming that kind of coalition that says, look, they are really putting Estonia at risk and at the expense of kind of its social responsibility towards kind of the citizens, and that does an economy like Estonia necessarily need to be that, lower its taxes and kind of incentivize gambling. Now, Kaja Kallas at the start of the year stated that she was not pro-gaming and that you have to separate gambling taxes and gambling policies from gambling activities themselves. Croatia has, a ban on gambling advertising, very strict licensing conditions on who can actually offer gambling to Estonian citizens. And she remains that, look, the debate has to be separated out between incentivizing business policies versus the actual B2C mandate for gambling in Estonia. I think, reaction to last Friday's decision saw a clear split in the ranks of the Liberal coalition. I think that there will be some elements of kind of soothing kind of divisions within that.
Mm-hmm. And what's the Liberal coalition sort of economic outlook for Estonia, and how does gambling come into play on this? Because one thing I find interesting is that they've lowered the tax rate, but the tax rate was only 6% to begin with, and it's going to 4%. So how much tax receipts is the state actually generating from gambling anyway? I
don't necessarily think it's about tax receipts. I think it's much more about investment and getting kind of new domiciled businesses into Estonia. Estonia is a small country. It's about 1.2 million people. However, it has a highly skilled workforce. It has suffered from kind of economic kind of brain drain in previous years, which the government wants to answer by keeping its citizens, especially its younger population, in Estonia with good jobs and, high-paying jobs too. This is a problem that's happened, that it's witnesses across kind of neighboring countries in the region. And again, it's turning to, what are the growing sectors within Europe? What can it make, how can it change policies to make it attractive to kind of growing sectors in which it sees kind of iGaming as one? The other sectors that it's investing, it's going to, green tech, biotech too. Estonia wants to be a player within kind of very westernized technology sectors, and this is its push to do so.
And Ted, we'll talk about it a little bit more after the break about the wider impact of this, but how do you view Estonia positioning gambling as a key sort of economic growth driver?
How do I view it? It's a move that, should they get it? Should the Estonian government get it off the ground fully with the different the legislation they're pushing is not just for taxation, but they've been looking at a couple of other areas as well, like AML and KYC requirements around crypto. I think quite a few companies see as potentially setting the groundwork for like regulated crypto betting in a European jurisdiction. If they are to get this full package of reforms off the ground, it would be quite a significant moment, really, for the wider European gambling space, both in a regulatory sense and market opportunities kind of sense. Really, I think it could represent quite a big challenger to some of the established European iGaming hubs, the ones we talked about earlier, obviously Malta, Gibraltar, and the Isle of Man. But yeah, obviously that does all hinge on how they implement it, how they handle it, and ultimately if they are able to present themselves as a new and potentially better alternative to these three jurisdictions that have been around for decades, and a lot of people in the industry know as solid, reliable jurisdictions.
Great. Well, Ted, let's take a short break and then we'll carry on the discussion.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily. Today we're talking all about Estonia, its tax cuts on iGaming, and the potential impact that could have on a wider European and global basis. Ted, Estonia is no stranger to iGaming. We know that there are companies who are based there. Could you just give our listeners a sense of what Estonia's current gambling setup looks like?
So you're right. Look, Estonia operates a fully regulated online gambling market under the 2008 Gambling Act, and that's overseen by the Tax and Customs Board. At present, at a B2C level, it has 25 operators who currently hold active online licenses in many kind of well-established brands such as Betson, Entain, and Olympic Casino are established in Estonia. At a B2B level, the business registry has 68 businesses domiciled in Estonia. The premier ones being Olympic Entertainment and YOLO Group. Estonia has an infrastructure, I think it believes that it has an infrastructure that is different than Malta and Gibraltar in that I think that it believes that it can bring kind of new disciplines to the online gambling sector that have not been around in its kind of heritage hubs. That I think one of them being kind of R&D and also kind of advanced kind of fintech integrations. I think another area that it sees is that Estonia is kind of very much leading the change for the uptake of crypto within European markets. So that could be another kind of lever that it uses to attract businesses.
Yeah, let's dive into this because there's no secret that this is a direct challenge to the established order of Malta, Gibraltar, Isle of Man, as Ted said. But there are other challengers out there. There's plenty of iGaming businesses in places like Sofia, Bucharest, Athens, and look, is Estonia going to establish itself as this next frontier for iGaming, meaning all these businesses are going to swap the sunny Mediterranean for the beautiful but slightly cooler Tallinn?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Like I said earlier, they are going to have a job on their hands of presenting themselves as a new and better alternative to these established jurisdictions, these Mediterranean jurisdictions, as you pointed out, Charlie. I think Ted has just hinted at it. Well, not hinted at, Ted has mentioned this one and I mentioned it earlier. I think a really big one here could be the inclusion of crypto in this. A lot of people in this industry, both in the betting industry and in the crypto sector itself, have been closely following the idea of regulated crypto betting across European markets. There's a huge amount of value in that, but it is obviously something that is largely unregulated and a bit of a grey area. So the idea that maybe Estonia could become a hub for the future of a regulated aspect of this, like a more white market for that, could be quite a big selling point to companies who are interested in expanding into that area, 100%. I think as well, there could be an element here of we see things divide more on like a regional basis where, we've seen a lot of companies targeting expansion in Eastern Europe and the Baltics regions over the past couple of years. Ted mentioned Entain as an example there. Like they used an acquisition in Estonia to to kind of help springboard their wider Eastern European business, along with one in Croatia as well. So perhaps the Estonian government have taken notice of the fact that quite a few major PLCs, Entain and Flutter being two of the biggest ones, they've taken notice of these companies wanting to expand their foothold in Eastern Europe, and perhaps they see themselves as we could serve as a springboard for that and cash in doing so.
Yeah, but is tax cuts always the answer to attracting businesses, retaining skilled domestic talent and resources? Or is it, as Ted O'C says, maybe going that next step and, regulating crypto betting? Is it just the tax cuts that would attract businesses, or is there something else that would play into Estonia's hands, Ted?
I mean, it certainly helps, right? Sorry to interrupt there, but
No, go for it.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's pulled the trigger on lowering it down, taxes to 4%, and that matches Malta. So you got that at a base level. And I think that it's for the government of Estonia, it's a case of, taking one or two kind of dominoes off the table. Can it get one or two of the bigger kind of PLCs to kind of domicile in Estonia? That would make a massive impact. You've also, I think, got to take into account the context of how the Estonian government wants to grow its economy. I don't think it's necessarily about kind of grabbing the tax. I just think that it wants high, sophisticated businesses to invest in its nation and continue kind of this process of improving kind of IT infrastructures. I think that it comes at a time where all management and all leadership are revising kind of cost controls across their businesses. And if there's an opportunity where they believe that Estonia offers a better package, they might pull the lever and transfer their businesses there. What surprises me more is that why kind of, especially European countries of the size of Estonia, haven't really gone down this path too. We know how iGaming companies invest. We know what they're looking for. And I think the other factor here is that even if you look at Malta or Gibraltar, these even within themselves are kind of oversaturated in the amount of online gambling businesses that are there. And I think Estonia views that it can pick up one or two businesses there and transfer them over.
Yeah, this leads me nicely into the next question, really, which is, what's so bad about Malta that all these businesses need to be attracted elsewhere? Because you look at it on the surface of things, and Malta has been an established hub of this industry for a long, long time. You've got a pool of talent there who are industry experts, businesses there that have grown with the industry for a long, long time. Again, it might be frivolous, but the weather is also a bit of a factor for people who want to maybe relocate there as well. So what do we need competition for Malta and Gibraltar and the likes? And if so, why?
No, I think you raise a good point. But I think, look, we welcome competition in business, and we should welcome competition in policy and kind of jurisdictions. And I think it's, down to what they offer. And internally also, it makes for a more kind of diverse industry on the whole. The fact that, you don't necessarily have to be stuck in Malta or Gibraltar. You can pick different destinations, different jurisdictions. And even if it was a higher tax rate of 6%, Estonia should be considered. It should be allowed to make its play for gambling businesses. And I think that it may open or usher in kind of a new era of how gambling is kind of transposed or gambling kind of interplays into kind of new economies. It's definitely like an interesting move, and one that we should be looking at in 2026.
Yeah, certainly. An exciting time for Estonia, a great place with a growing economy. And we'll see whether this helps contribute even more to sort of highly skilled, well-paid tech jobs in the country. Just quickly before we sign off, will we be following this one in 2026? If so, what are we looking out for? Are we looking out for any new businesses domiciling over there, or is it just wait and see? Let's see how this one plays out.
We'll be following everything in 2026, Charlie. Come on, man. That's what we do, innit? Nice bit of a shameless plug in there. No, but with respect to this story, yeah, we'll be keeping a close eye on it. For me personally, as you said, it'll depend on when this, when the legislation so on gets fully approved and enacted by the government. But as things go, yeah, monitoring any companies that might decide to move to Estonia, big or small, will be a big part of it. For me personally, I'm quite interested in seeing how some of the elements of this legislation and regulatory development plays out with regards to cryptocurrency, because we know that for companies like YOLO Group, they're particularly interested in that. They see Estonia as providing a potential platform for regulated crypto betting within the wider framework of the EU's markets and crypto assets regulations, which is quite a groundbreaking regulatory framework in itself. So yeah, I'm quite interested in seeing how that develops, particularly again within the wider context of crypto betting globally and how that sector has been developing over the past few years.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. Ted OC, Ted M, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and insights, and thank you very much to the audience for tuning into today's episode of iGaming Daily, and join us tomorrow to keep up to date with all the latest global gambling news.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.